Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sealed with Purpose. Thank you for joining me today, whatever day it may be. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful that you've decided to tune in or that you are listening in one of the podcast platforms. I'm excited for this episode and I'm excited to be here with you today and to have this conversation. I hope that by the time this episode airs, Christmas has already gone by, New Year's has already gone by. And I sincerely hope that you had an amazing time, that you were able to spend time with your family and just, really rest and take in the moment, take in the season. All right. So I'm excited about today's episode. I know I say that about every episode, but truly, this is something that brings me so much joy. And I'm really excited to be sitting here in front of you or to be on your radios, on your phones, wherever you're listening to me. Okay. And I am excited about this episode because I get to share a little bit more about myself and about experiences that I've had in my life that have really shaped me, have really made me the person that I am today. And I hope that you are encouraged by the things that we're going to talk about today. I hope that you receive it. And I hope that no matter what process you find yourself in today, no matter what area in the journey you're in today, because there's different parts to it, but I just pray that you're encouraged and that you receive this as on behalf of the Lord, because I believe that the conversation that we're having here today is instrumental and it's necessary. Okay. And so I've titled this episode, How Well Are You Waiting? How well are you waiting? There are different ways of waiting, and there's a way to wait on the Lord, right? I think that as we grow in the Lord and in our relationship with the Lord and things like that, there are seasons of waiting. Some of them I believe we can manage a little bit better. Some of them I believe that we struggle with tremendously and we don't know, how we're going to get through them or what we're going to do, right? Like let's be honest. There are seasons of waiting that are painful, that are difficult, that are just challenging all the way around. And I hope that through the Bible verse that I'm going to share with you today and through my experience, that you're just encouraged in your walk. And if you're waiting on the Lord right now, that you know that it is possible, that He is with you, that He will strengthen you, that He will guide you through all of this, and that you will come out on the other side. Okay. That's my prayer for you and for me today. Okay. And the verse that I'm going to be focusing on today is I also want to share with you real quick how I got to this verse and how I made the decision for this to be the next podcast. And I started a new job and I'm struggling a little bit with this. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that when you get comfortable at a place, it's hard to move on to something else. And even though that season is over, and I knew it was over before I was told it was over. And, the district is making a lot of changes and there's, positions being eliminated and my position, falls under that category. And at some point it will be eliminated. And so, but that news came after I knew the season was over. That news came after I had already had conversations with my husband and like, okay, like I feel like I've maxed out here. I feel like it's time to move on. I had all those thoughts, all those feelings, all those emotions. And I started a new job and I praise God for that. And in that job, I've taken a really huge demotion. I My pay has gone down significantly and the position level is significantly lower. And I've been sort of battling with that and just going back and forth with the Lord, with myself, with my husband about the situation because it has not been the easiest transition for me. And I believe that you can be thankful and you can also be just, struggling with something at the same time. And so I'm extremely thankful to the Lord because, my family depends on me to work and it's necessary, it's important. But I'm also struggling with the changes. And the thing is that I think that when we are vulnerable with the Lord and we are sincere in the way that we feel, it opens up an opportunity for God to speak to us in a way that we probably won't get if we are busy trying to be super spiritual and hide the way that we feel as if God doesn't already know, you know? And so I was talking to the Lord and I was just like, man, like I'm struggling. I'm struggling with this and I need you, you know? And there was a verse that came to my mind in that moment. And that's the verse that I want to focus on today. And that's where this episode really is born because I read this Bible verse in a different way. It's definitely not the first time I read it. It's a very popular verse, well known. I've quoted it many times. But when I really stopped to read it this time around, it was just like in my spirit, it just shed like a different light on it. And it really ministered to my life. And that's my prayer that it will also minister to yours. Okay. And that verse is Isaiah 40:31. And Isaiah 40:31 says, but they who wait on the Lord, okay, but they who wait on the Lord, some of you are already moving on ahead of me because you know the verse, but they who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Okay. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So I think it's that first sentence that really stood out for me this time in a way that was different than other times. And it's because, it says that those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more later, but that's the part that really stood out to me. So I started trying to get a little bit of context. I think it's important for us when we're reading scripture or if you're going through something and you're sitting there and a verse comes to your mind, like you feel it in your spirit and the Lord is speaking to you, do a little digging, go a little deeper. And that's what I did. And I'm not going to get into all the details, but I just want to let you know that during that time, this verse came after some instructions, like some instructions and some warnings for the people of Jerusalem. And these verses come as a way of comfort on behalf of the Lord. In the middle of looming circumstances, like the people of Jerusalem knew that the Babylonians were coming and that they would capture Jerusalem, God was giving them comfort with these verses. God was not erasing the circumstance. God was providing comfort in the middle of what was going to happen. There was something that was looming over the people of Jerusalem, and God was preparing his people and he was giving them comfort. It's almost like you're getting ready to go through something difficult, but I want to let you know that I'm here and that I will be your strength. And God does the same for us. He knows all things. God is sovereign. So he knows all things. He knows what's going to happen next. And he knows when there's something looming over us, right? That is getting ready to shift us, is getting ready to test us, is getting ready to put us through the fire. And in that moment, God uses Bible verses such as these to provide the comfort that we need so that we can face what's coming tomorrow. Okay? So as I read this verse and I got into the context of it, I was so encouraged by the way that the Lord handled this situation. And I was reminded of times in my life where I have gone through situations in which I knew something was coming that was going to be challenging, that was going to be difficult, but I also experienced the comfort of the Lord in the process. Sometimes I felt like he wasn't there. Okay. Sometimes I felt like, was he listening to me? But that's normal. That's stuff that we face and that we go through as humans, right? We have those moments where we're like, Lord, where are you? Why are you letting this happen? Why is all of this taking place? Like we have those moments. But I think that when you are in a relationship with the Lord and you're solid in your understanding of who God is and how God works, I think that we are able to find comfort in even the simplest of things. And so I want to share a little bit of something that I experienced, and it's something that is still very present in my life. It's not something that has been completely removed, but it was an experience in my life that I think, it's an experience that really changed me, really shaped me, really caused me to mature probably quicker than I anticipated, or I don't know, because it's just there's certain things that you go through in life that just push you to step it up, you know, and mature in this walk with the Lord. So the story that I'm about to share with you, the experience I'm about to share with you, it comes from my perspective, but this really is about my husband. And it's something that he's had to deal with for many years. And it's something that he's still dealing with today. But I want to share my perspective. I want to share my experience with you. And I pray that you're encouraged by this because it really was something great. It was significant. It was something that didn't last just a few days, a few weeks, a few months. It's actually been going on for 16 years of my life. So I've been married for 16 years. And one thing that I didn't know when I was going to get married was that my husband had a condition called polycystic kidney disease. So it's PKD, polycystic kidney disease. I knew that he was diabetic. I knew that was something that he dealt with as a child and continued to deal with. I knew that. But I remember after we made the decision to get married that my mother-in-law spoke to me and told me, hey, I just, want to let you know that, Jerry has this condition. And she started to explain it to me a little bit. And I didn't know how to process it in that moment. It definitely wasn't going to be something that was going to change my mind about getting married, but it definitely was too much for me to handle in that moment. I think I couldn't process it properly. I don't think I know I didn't fully understand it. It took me a long time to understand what it was that he had. So if you don't know what PKD is, or polycystic kidney disease, it's really a genetic disorder. It's not something that you get because you did this or because, that happened or whatever. Like, it's not something that you give yourself because you're not taking care of yourself or anything like that. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's actually a genetic disorder. And I learned very quickly that this is something that is passed down to your children. It could be passed down to your children, your grandchildren, and there's a 50% chance that this gets passed down. So this is something that his family has dealt with for many years. And he's got, his father, he's some of his siblings, aunts, uncles, like this something that's been going on for some time. And this genetic disorder consists of numerous cysts, okay, that are in the kidney, and they cause kidney damage, they cause high blood pressure, and it ultimately could lead to kidney failure. Not everyone that has PKD has the same experience that my husband had. There are people who can live with PKD and not even know it. There are people who can live with PKD for their whole lives, and it's not until they're significantly older that it starts affecting them, or affecting their quality of life. However, with my husband, it was different. With my husband, it just hit him really hard and it happened very quickly. And I remember that it was just like the first couple of months of our marriage when he had his first hospital visit being married to me for this condition. And he had never experienced what he was experiencing in that moment. He had never experienced it before, not to that level. And so that was, I think, 2 or 3 months into our marriage was the first hospital visit for his condition. And I quickly had to learn how severe this was and how significant it was because it affected him in a way that even the medical professionals, those like nephrologists, I would see him and stuff like that, like they could not really say why this young man in his 20s was experiencing PKD in such an advanced form, right? It was just happening so quickly. It was just progressing very quickly. Even though we were in the hospital for the first, like it happened the first couple months of our marriage, that first hospital visit, he really held himself together. I think that, you know, it's just admirable the way that he held himself together. He continued to push himself. He continued to work. He continued to be a positive person in our lives. And that really helped the process. I want to let you know that, like, throughout this whole experience, his demeanor, his confidence in the Lord, his ability to be still really helped me. And I think those around him, as definitely his kids, right? It really helped us as a family unit process this and go through this because he was not just letting this consume him. He was moving on with his life. I remember when we were talking about getting married, and when we got married, like the plan was I was a single mom for some years, and getting married was something that it was like it just didn't happen overnight, right? It was something that when you go through divorce or something like that, like something serious like that, you think about it before you do it. And I remember us having a lot of conversations about it. And one of the things that we talked about, we planned early on, was that when we got married, I would be a stay-at-home mom to continue to raise my daughter, and we would have children very quickly. Okay, that was the plan. I was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. He was going to be the provider. As a man, he thrived in that. Like, he loved being a provider. He was a provider to his family before we got married, to his mom, to his siblings. And it was just, providing just came second nature to him. Okay. So our plan was for me to stay home and have babies and, take care of the home and do all the things. During that time, I was very traditional like that, and I think I still am. Like, that's still something that is in me, but that was, like, set, like, this is what we're gonna do, and that's what we move forward with. He was working, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I gotta say, like, life was good. After everything that I had been through before with my ex-husband and just being a single mom and all the things that come along with it, life was good. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. It was good, and we were living out our plan. We were doing that which we said we were going to do, okay? And there were a lot of hospital visits. Like, it just continued. After that first visit, it continued and it continued, and sometimes the hospital visits would be for a few days, like 2, 3 days. Sometimes it would be a week. There was a period of time where it was like 2 weeks. Like, it just got worse and worse. And you can see that PKD was taking a toll on his quality of life. It was affecting him in a lot of ways. And I got to tell you, I was in every hospital visit. I was in every doctor visit. I didn't know a lot about this condition, but let me tell you, I became so knowledgeable in it because I was like, I got to know how I'm going to help him. I want to know how I can help him. I want to know what to look out for. I want to know what's coming. I wanted to know everything. And so I was in every visit and every consultation, every hospital visit. If he was admitted every single time he went to the ER, he was admitted to the hospital, and I would stay with him. I would sleep on the couch. I would not leave his side. I mean, I think sometimes the doctors and the nurses were frustrated with me because when they asked a question, I was the one that answered, because it's not that he couldn't speak up for himself. Is that if you know my husband, you know he's gonna minimize what he's feeling, and he's gonna make it sound better than what it is. And so I wanted to make sure that they understood, okay, this is what he's going through, this is what he's feeling, this is what's really happening, so that he could get the best care that he needed in that moment. So I was there for everything. Okay. And I gotta say that through every hospital visit, through every consultation with his nephrologist and primary doctors and everything, you would look at my husband and my husband was still. Like, my husband was at peace in a lot of ways. I think that there was fear. I think that there was a lot of questions and all that stuff. Like, I'm not, he's not superhuman, but he definitely was still. And again, that brought a lot of comfort to me because if he was still, I felt like I could be at peace too because he's the one going through it. I'm just next to him watching what he's going through, and his stillness, his ability to trust the Lord and to wait on the Lord really helped me in the process as his wife and ultimately as his caregiver. Now, let me tell you something. None of this happened without criticism. It doesn't matter what you're going through. I feel like there's always going to be people in your life who are going to criticize what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're in the situation that you're in. Like it's just it didn't come without its criticism. Like there was people that very close to us at that time who just suddenly became experts of PKD because everyone is an expert when you're going through something. And they blamed him for his medical condition. They blamed him for it progressing as fast as it could. We had medical professionals telling us there's no medication because there is no medication for it. There's nothing that we can tell you to do to make this go away. This is genetic. This is going to happen and it's going to progress. And we don't know how it's going to progress. We cannot tell how far it's going to get. But what we can say is that this has progressed a lot quicker than what we're used to. Okay. It was like basically, you're too young for this. Like there's children who are born with PKD because you could be born with it or it can come on later on. And there's children that could be born with it and immediately be affected by it. That's a separate situation. That's not something that that kid asked for. That's not something that they knew. That wasn't them not taking care of themselves. It's just a way that the disease progresses in certain people that is different than others. And as his wife, that was hard. That was hard to hear the judgment, to hear the criticism that was coming his way. And even it went as far as blaming me for what I was cooking for him and all that stuff. And so that was not easy. That didn't make the process easier. It only added an unnecessary weight to it. You know, when you have polycystic kidney disease, one of the things that come with it is high blood pressure. His diabetes was not as a result of his PKD. That happened as a child. But the high blood pressure was a result of his kidney condition. And so the only thing that the doctors could keep keep under control was his high blood pressure with medication and stuff like that. And certainly there are foods when you have high blood pressure that you shouldn't be eating, that you should avoid, and things of that nature. That I understand. We all understood that. But for the polycystic kidney disease itself, there was just really nothing that he could do. I will never forget one of those hospital visits where they, did some scans like they always did and they found a really big cyst in one of his kidneys, or at least they assumed it was a cyst. It could have been a cyst, it could have been a mass. They didn't know. They didn't know, but what they knew was that it progressed. And in previous scans, it wasn't as big, and now it's bigger. And so they had to do a CT scan. But the problem was, I don't remember if it was a CT scan or an MRI, but I remember them, I think it was a CT scan, but I remember them coming into the room and saying, the only way that we're going to know if this is a mass that could be cancerous or if this is a really big cyst is if we take images with the dye that they put, through your IV so that they can see clearly. The struggle here was that his kidneys were so full of cysts that it was hard to really tell what was going on. That's how many cysts he was. Like, you couldn't just get an image and be like, "Okay, that's a mass, that's this." No, because it was just so many of them that it's hard to tell. And so they would have to do like a CT scan with contrast, basically, so that they can see more clearly. The problem with that was that because of his condition, he cannot have a CT scan with contrast. The outcome of that could be potentially, deadly. If he did the CT scan with contrast, he ran the risk of becoming paralyzed or worse. Okay. So I remember the nephrologist coming into the room and saying, "Look, we don't know what this is. We don't know if it's cancer. We don't know if it's a cyst that just grew larger. We don't know if it's several cysts that are together. What we do know is that we can't see it with regular scans without the contrast." So they said, "It's up to you. It's up to you if you want to do the CT scan with contrast. then we can do that so that we can get more clarity. But, basically the risk is on you. And you let us know what you guys want to do. And he left. And I remember in that moment, my sister in law and her husband walked into the room to visit. And I just broke down crying. They came immediately after that. And I broke down crying because I was like, oh my gosh, like, we want to know. Like, we want to know, is this cancer? Is this like a mass that is cancerous? Or is this a cyst? And that's another thing. Like, had it been a mass, to do a biopsy and all that stuff, it's also another set of challenges because the kidney was so full of cysts that it's like, how do you get in there? So there was a lot of things at stake here. And we had to make a decision together. Like, do we run the risk of doing the CT scan and doing it with contrast and you're becoming paralyzed? Or do we just leave this in God's hands and see what happens? And it was really hard. It was a really hard moment. It was one of those moments in the journey where it just kind of, I felt like everything stopped. And I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders because even though it was his decision to make, when you become one, what the other decision the other person makes really affects you. And then we have kids, and at this point, like, we have kids, and it doesn't just affect him, it doesn't just affect me, it affects these kids. And so, you know, it was really challenging for me to be his wife in that moment, not because of him, but because I didn't know what to do in this situation. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know what I could do to make it better. I just knew that we were at a dead end, and we really needed to shift our focus and really put our trust in God. Those were really hard moments for us in our marriage and in this situation. And just talking about it today, I just feel like a when you feel in your stomach, like in the pit of your stomach, like you feel that tension, you feel that because that's how hard that was. That even thinking about it today makes me feel that way all over again. Like, man, like that was really hard. That was really hard to walk away from that hospital a few days later saying, okay, we don't know if he has cancer. We don't know if this is a cyst, but we're gonna trust God. We're gonna trust God and we're gonna wait and we're gonna see what happens. That's basically what we did. Slowly, his condition got worse and worse. I think maybe saying slowly is a stretch. It happened pretty quickly. His condition got worse and worse. His kidney function got worse and worse. His ability to work was just becoming less and less of a possibility. He was missing a lot of work because he was in the hospital so much. And the reason he was in the hospital so much was because of his work, right? And there came a point where we decided, okay, because my husband is a mechanic by trade. And there came a moment where we're like, okay, that kind of physical work is just not good for your kidney. So we decided this is going to be really hard. We ended up having to move in with family. And we knew that it was going to be really hard, but he said, I'm going to go work at a store. And he started working at a store overnight. And it was significantly less money. It affected us financially. Our boys were babies. We had two boys back to back, and they were babies. When all of this was happening, our youngest was a newborn when all of this was happening, the job transition. And it was hard, but he got this other job, and we were hoping that if this job was less strenuous on him and on his kidneys, then he'll be able to continue to work and we'll continue to move forward with our family and stuff like that. But the truth is that it didn't work. He continued to be going to the hospital, in and out of the hospital. And eventually, I told him, I said, okay, we had to have like that hard conversation and say, okay, you can't work anymore, right? Yes, our plan from the beginning was for me to stay home, him to continue to work and provide for the family and all that stuff, but it was too hard, it was too much. And we had to make the decision to trust God and things really changed for us because, he went from being the provider and me being a stay-at-home mom to me being the provider and him being a stay-at-home dad. And I think for a man who is just very traditional in the roles that, you know, are played in the home, right? The man, the woman, like we come from very traditional backgrounds in that sense, where it's like the man is the provider, um, the woman is his helper basically, and that doesn't mean a woman doesn't work, but in our eyes, we're like, "Okay, that was the goal, like, I'm gonna stay home and have kids, I'm gonna raise them. When they're old enough, I'll go back to work," things like that. We were very traditional in that sense, but we had to change everything. We had to change the way we thought about, you know, how we were gonna raise our family and what we were gonna do because his condition would not allow for our plan to come to pass, right? And all the while, all this stuff is happening, there's this looming feeling of dialysis, and there's a looming feeling of kidney transplant, and there's an even bigger looming feeling of this can lead to death. Like that never escaped my mind and that never escaped my prayers. Like I knew what was happening. I knew he was going into kidney failure. I learned enough about his condition to know what was happening. And it just got worse. It just got worse with time, and I really feel like it happened very quickly. He was so young when we got married. He was in his 20s, and it just happened almost it feels like if I look back at it now, it almost feels like the majority of our time has been, dealing with this, and so I feel like it happened so quickly in the beginning of our marriage, that we didn't always have time to process what was happening next, but we knew what was looming over us. Like we knew what this disease brought with it. So me working and him staying at home with the kids became our new normal. And I have to say that was really hard for me. It's still something that when I talk about or when I think about it, it's an emotional, it's like a soft spot for me because when those roles change, even though it was not anybody's fault, right? But when those roles change, you feel it. It's not as simple as I went back to work, he stayed home with the kids. It's not that simple. Now I have babies and even my daughter who was older, who were used to seeing dad home. And when they needed anything, and till this day this happens, when they needed anything, they would first call dad because dad was always there with them. Mom was working, right? So all of that brought about some pain and some resistance from my part. There was anger there, there was resentment there. And I tried not to resent him and I tried not to resent God because I knew that it wasn't his fault. I knew that it wasn't my husband's fault. But you can't help but feel that tension and feel that how as a woman, how that makes you feel, as a mom, how that makes you feel. Where it's like, it's not that you're not needed, but you're not needed in the same way because dad is home all the time. And dad is the one who's getting us up in the morning. And dad is the one who's making us breakfast. And dad is the one who's getting us dressed. And, dad is there when mom is not. And as a woman, it really took a toll on me and it was hard. And I gotta say that what really helped me in the process was my husband's gentleness, the way that he remained still through the process, the way that he encouraged me and reminded me how important I was to my kids and how much my kids loved me and how much they needed me. Like he really was my support system in that process. I was his support system through what he was going through, and I was his shoulder, and I was, there through it all, but really he was there for me in a way that I'm just so thankful because when I was feeling inadequate, when I was feeling like a failure, when I was feeling like I wasn't enough to go through all of this, he was so encouraging and he was there to remind me who I was in Christ and the type of wife that I was and the type of mother that I was, so I'm really thankful for that. Eventually, he got approved for a disability through Social Security. And that alleviated some of the strain financially that we were going through because I was not making the same amount of money that he made. So it wasn't the same. And it really helped when he started getting disability because it took some of that weight off of me in a lot of ways. I'm still the main provider of the household, but he having that disability really just aided, like that weight that I was feeling. I was still leaving work early or not showing up because I wanted to be with him. And every time he was in the hospital, I wanted to be by his side, or I needed to stay home with the kids because dad is in the hospital for a few days. We don't know how long it's going to be. And so it was still affecting us financially. There was still a lot of stuff happening, that was really affecting us, but we went through it. We went through it and we went through it together. And I got to say, God was with us every step of the way. And that looming feeling that we had of what was coming or what could come, God was with us every step of the way to strengthen us and to walk with us in the process and to put all the pieces together when everything felt like it was falling apart. Now, with this condition, like I mentioned, there's that possibility of being on dialysis and of needing a kidney transplant. That happens to some people who have PKD. And with my husband, because it was progressing so quickly, that dialysis was really looming over us. And to get dialysis here in Florida, the kidney has to be at a 20% or below a 20% kidney function for them to do dialysis. Now, mind you, my husband's condition is not on one kidney, is on both. So his kidneys were failing very quickly. And it wasn't just one, it was both of his kidneys. Okay. And so we knew that the time was coming. I remember he was like at a 22% kidney function when the nephrologist said, we're going to refer you to a surgeon so you can get the fistula put in. They put a fistula in the arm usually. And that takes about 2 or 3 months to heal so that it can be used for dialysis. So the doctor wanted to get ahead of the game, get the fistula in there, let it heal so that when the moment came that his kidney was below a 20%, fistula's already there and they can start. However, I remember going to a visit with him, and there were certain things that I was noticing about him that let me know that his kidneys were failing. And I'll share one of them with you, and that is there's like this metallic smell that comes um, in their breath when there's kidney failure. That was one of the symptoms. It wasn't all the symptoms that I was noticing, but that was a significant one. And I went to this appointment with him, and as usual, my husband minimized what he was feeling and what he was going through. And so I said, Doctor, I want to share with you what I'm seeing. And, asked his wife, and he was like, please do, because men normally don't, you know? So I shared, what I was noticing. His appetite had changed. There was a lot of nausea. There was just a lot of things. And, there was that metallic smell. And when I had mentioned to my husband that his breath smelled metallic, he was also tasting that, So I let the doctor know. And so he said, okay, well, we need to run some tests. They do like this 24-hour urine test, and that really lets them know the kidney function. So that's what they did. And my husband went back to get his result. I stayed home with the kids that day. And when he came home, he looked like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. And I said, what did they say? And he's like, I have to go to the hospital. I have to start dialysis as soon as possible. And I was trying to get more information from him, but he didn't want to talk about it because the kids were there and he didn't want to scare them. And obviously I'm emotional. Um, what had been looming over us for so long was here. And I wanted to comfort him. I wanted to show him that I was there for him, but he didn't want to be hugged. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to break down because he didn't want the kids to be affected. And I was having a hard time with that because as he's going through this shockwave, right? Like as he's feeling what he's feeling, I'm also feeling it too. And so I felt like I needed that support. I felt like I needed him to I wanted to embrace him. I wanted to for him to comfort me and for me to comfort him. But he just didn't want to talk about it, and he went to the room to basically pack some stuff to take to the hospital with him. And I reached out to his sister who lived just a couple doors down, and I said, I need your help. Like, this is happening, and, you know, I don't know what to do. And she quickly came over and she just went into the room and she just hugged him and they both cried. And he mentioned to her, like, I just don't want the kids to see me like this. So, we went to the hospital. We left the kids with family. We went to the hospital. They did the first surgery was fistula in his neck because they needed to do emergency dialysis. So they couldn't put the fistula in his arm and then give it 2 or 3 months for it to heal. They needed to start dialysis like yesterday. And so they put a fistula in his neck and they started dialysis that same day. And then the very next day, they did another surgery where they placed a fistula in his arm for future dialysis sessions. It was really hard to see him in that state. He is the life of the party. He's a happy person, a person who never ceases to make anybody laugh. Like, he's just a goofball. Um, and it was hard to see him in that state, to see him in that condition. And I knew that things were going to change. I don't think that I was prepared. I don't think you ever are prepared for it to for things to change in that magnitude because the way we were doing life changed completely. He went on to have 3 dialysis sessions a week, each one lasting about 2 hours. And I got to say that even though there was physical changes and even though there were some emotional changes, he was still he was still. He went through dialysis like a champ. He went through dialysis in a way that I never imagined because I heard horror stories about what dialysis does to people. He saw a lot of people die, people that would come to dialysis and he would see them 3 times a week and they would have, conversation here or there, who would die. And meanwhile, he's, getting dialysis and waiting for the miracle of either God healing him or God providing a kidney for him. So fast forward to that moment that then after dialysis looming over us, during our journey and during that time, there was this kidney transplant, right? And in my prayers, I always said, Lord, I know that you will provide a miracle and it will either come in a form of complete healing because I believe God can heal a person completely. Okay. Or it will come through the miracle of a transplant because I believe transplants are miracles as well. And that was like looming over us because I knew as we prayed for a transplant, if that was the way God was going to bring healing, I knew what that meant, right? Like when he was signing up for the transplant list and everything, I knew what that meant because when you're waiting for a transplant, most of the time, if not all the time, that comes as a result of someone dying. And that is hard in itself. Sometimes I would pray for God to bring a transplant or, for him to have his kidney and have his transplant. And I would get a sense of guilt. How could I be praying for someone to pass away so that my husband can live? I went through moments of feeling like I was being selfish. I felt like I was not being considerate of the families, right? And what they go through when they lose a loved one and they give that miracle of life. And then there was moments where my prayer was just like, okay, Lord, like, you know all things. You know how this is going to happen. You know how this is going to come. So even though I knew that the transplant was the solution, if God was not going to do a miracle and heal his body completely, I knew that the only way for him to live was to get this transplant. But it was something that was looming over us. And instead of it being this sense of like joy, like a transplant is coming, right? We're on the list. It's coming at some point. Anytime it could happen, anytime, like, have your phone nearby. Like, it was 4.5 years that he was on dialysis, and it was 4.5 years of vacillating between the joy of getting the call and what that will look like, and the mourning and the grief that comes with understanding that someone had to die, right? So that you can get this miracle of life. So the day came, um, he received the call. I remember I was at a women's event at my church, and he received the call, and I was shocked. Like, when he called me, there was a lot of noise where I was at, and so I stepped outside and I said, he's like, they called me from the hospital. I got to go to the hospital. And I said, go to the hospital for what? It didn't, like, I didn't realize what he was saying. I don't know. I thought maybe something happened to the kids, or I don't know. Like, I didn't know. He said, they called me. The kidney, they called me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then he says, they're calling me right now. Let me call you back. And I was in the state of shock. And I remember walking back into the women's Christmas party, and I don't know if my face said it all, but I just remember just being in a state of shock. And I remember I was like, guys, like, I was like getting their attention, and I said, Jerry got the call. Jerry got the call. And there's actually a video of the reaction right after that. And I have it on my social media. And I love every year when we celebrate his transplant. Um, I love watching that moment. I love watching that moment. I really do. And um and I remember just the eruption of clapping and screaming and celebration that he got the call, and I had to get out of there, because you only have 2 hours to get to the hospital. The hospital was about an hour and a half away or so, and so we were like, we needed to just, whenever they said go, we needed to leave. And so I was just like in a state of shock. We were celebrating, and then I said, I gotta go. I'm so sorry. I gotta go. And I left the party, and I remember just being like nervous and being like in shock and not knowing what to do next. And I started to call certain people and let them know, like his mom and his sisters, and I started just to call somebody, hey, we got the call. Like, they have a kidney for him. And the thing, it took 4.5 years because my husband is young, and he needed a really good kidney. So it had to be from like a younger person. It had to be in really good condition so that it would last, right? Because some people get a kidney transplant, the kidney's not that great, and then they go into kidney failure again, and they have to go through the whole process again. And, from the very beginning, his option was, I'd rather wait longer, if possible, so that I can get a good kidney and it will last me. So, I get home, and we're just like waiting for the call that says, okay, come now, right? Because they call you and they say, we have this kidney for you. Do you want it? You say yes, but now they gotta run some tests, do some stuff. Like, there's a really big behind the scenes process that happens, that they can call you back and say, you know what, it was determined that it's not a good match, so we're gonna have to wait for another one. So there's always that risk. So you're celebrating, but you're always like, but you don't know, right? Are they gonna call and say, you know what, we can't, or we're gonna give it to somebody else, or whatever the case may be. But with Jerry, it was different. They called us and they said, it's good, let's go. And so we went that night. It was night. And we went, and he got he did all the tests, and he signed all the paperwork, and he did all the things. And we were excited. but we were also grieving. And that's just not something that you expect to feel, but that's how we felt. We were celebrating, and at the same time, there was moments where we stopped and we talked about this family who just lost a loved one. The person who gave my husband the miracle of life was in his very early 50s. Overall healthy person who died, suddenly. They don't give you information. Um you cannot meet the family unless that's something that they want to do, and a big part of me wanted to meet them and thank them, but also offer up my condolences for their loss. I was thinking he or she was a parent, was a grandparent, was a sibling, was a son, a daughter, I don't know. Like, there's a family grieving. And if I could have a moment to talk to this family, I would just want them to know how sorry I was that they lost this person, but also how thankful I am that they gave my person the opportunity to live longer, to be around for our kids. We have one grandchild now. We're getting ready to have another, and he's going to be around for that in the name of Jesus. And and I've always asked the Lord for the opportunity to be able to meet them, and I haven't. I always asked the Lord for the opportunity to be able to meet this family and say these things, but God knows all things, right? This is part of the process. This is part of the journey. And I'm incredibly thankful to the Lord for what he has done and for the way that he has sustained us. It has been 16 years of marriage, and his condition has been present for 16 years. He's a lot better now. He's not on dialysis, but life changed after transplant. Life changed after dialysis. Life changed after transplant. He's not able to go back to work. There's still challenges that he's facing. He still has those two big, ginormous kidneys that are full of cysts, and now he has a third kidney. Life is different, but there's life. But I wanted to share this Bible verse with you, Isaiah 40:31, as we read in the beginning of this episode, because what I learned while I was reading this verse at work and having all these questions for the Lord about where I was in my life and all those things, I learned that the key to surviving your waiting period is to wait on the Lord. Because when we wait on the Lord, we are promised his strength. We're not promised his strength if we're waiting on our own strength, if we're waiting on our own knowledge. I think people try to make too much sense of things, and we try to rationalize everything, but there are certain things in life and certain things that you will go through in your walk with the Lord that you cannot rationalize, but you have to have faith and you have to wait on him. And I want to tell you today that when you wait on him, your strength is going to be renewed. When you're waiting on him, even when it hurts, when it makes no sense, when it is painful, when you're watching someone that you love go through such hard challenges, when you're seeing your children go through things, when you're facing the loss of a loved one, when your finances are not right and you suddenly have to change jobs or change careers, you know, when life is lifing, basically, I just want to encourage you today to wait on the Lord, because the only way that we're going to survive things in this walk is waiting on the Lord and receiving the strength that comes as we wait on him. And we have to know, we have to understand that however it comes, I believe that the miracle that my husband received was either going to come through complete healing, or it was going to come through the miracle of a transplant. Whatever way the Lord decides to do it, had it been not one or the other, and had God decided that his time here on earth was over, I still believe that the strength of the Lord is what helps us endure and get through to the other side, and understand that his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. But you know what? His plan is so much better than mine. And that's not something you can rationalize. That's something that you live out. That's something that you put your whole faith and your whole trust in him, and understand that what he's doing and what he's allowing is for a reason, and that he's with you and he's going to help you get out of that, or he's going to help you endure it. Because not always do we get out of situations. He helps us endure it. He gives us the strength that we need to go through it. So I just wanted to share that with you today. And I hope that you receive that from the Lord. And I pray that whoever is listening to this or watching this right now, that you know that the Lord is speaking to you and letting you know, wait on me. Wait on me. Believe me, trust me. Rely on me. Don't rely on your own understanding. And I promise I'm going to strengthen you through that process. So whatever is looming over you, whatever is looming over your household, whatever is happening right now, wait on the Lord. He will renew your strength and you will get through this. And I'm going to close like I close all the time. You have been sealed with purpose. There's something greater that God has in store for you. You have to go through this to become the person that God intended you to be. I am a much better wife and a much better mother, a much better person because of my experience. I believe if my husband was sitting here today, he would have his own story and tell you how it impacted him and what it caused him to become. We all have things that we have to go through. But when we wait on the Lord, he will renew our strength. You have been sealed with purpose. Don't give up. God is not finished with you yet. So make sure that if this message has gotten to you, you receive it, or you know someone who needs it, share it with them. Support us here in Sealed with Purpose by sharing it with them. It's not a gain for us. It's not for us to get another view, to get another like. That's not what it's about. It's about sharing the word of God. It's about sharing what the Lord is doing. And it's about reigniting that fire for our purpose and for what the Lord has called us to do. I love you. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day.